Now, neutrophils. Again, we covered the immune system later on in the semester. For now, I want you to know that they're the most abundant type of leukocyte. That means they're of all the white blood cells, you have so many of these neutrophils. They're the most abundant type. And neutrophils are granulocytes. And what's a granulocyte? Well, remember, cyte means cells, right? So it's a site that has granules. And do I want you to know every single thing that's in these granules inside these cells? Not really. There's so many chemicals, but granules, when these immune cells, they're kind of like the ammunition for these immune cells, and they have many different weapons chemical weapons that they're in their arsenal to combat against pathogens. But again, things yeah, there's so many things. Don't worry too much about specifics right now, but know that the granules contain these defensive chemicals. And they're also what you call phagocytes. So phage phae in Greek means to eat. So what they do are cells are that eat. Phagocytes are cells that eat. So they eat things like small particles, debris, pathogens, sometimes other cells like the red blood cells. But in this case, we're talking about neutrophils, not macrophages. And again, there's more things about neutrophils I want you to know later on this semester, but keep it pretty surface level and limited to the blood chapter for now. And eosinophils, so notice that they both look kind of spotty, and is it due to the image quality? Yes and no. I mean, when you look at neutrophils and eosinophils, notice that they're not quite, their coloration besides their nuclei is kind of spotty and patchy. So these are all these little granules. So eosinophils, notice that neutrophils, they stain better with that purple hematoxylin dye, whereas eosinophils, they stain better with that pink eosin dye. So they have in their cytoplasm, they have more positive charges. And this is one thing that's special. They help to protect against viruses and also parasites as well, especially worm-like parasites like, was it helminths? I think that's one of the main things they help to defend against. There are also granulocytes. Again, this is why they look spotty in both. And again, they have a lot of positive charges. That's why they stain better with that pink eosin dye. And they're also phagocytes. So just like neutrophils, they can engulf small pathogens and debris. Same with eosinophils. Now, basophils, again, you see I think the clusters and granules are a little easier to see in this one, especially like here. So basophils, they also have a lot of granules, and these granules contain a chemical called histamine, and you might have heard of that. Maybe you've taken an antihistamine. And why? Because like the thing is that basophils, these histamine granules are very important, or just histamine in general, is important in allergic reactions. And if you have a very severe allergic reaction, it could result in something we call anaphylaxis. We will cover this more in detail later on in the semester. And they are similar but different than mast cells. So mast cells are another type of cell that can release histamine and participate in allergies. But again, for more detailed immunology, I'm saving that for the third exam. And again, this is why you might have taken an antihistamine if you had an allergic reaction, if you've had like maybe hives, or like even like seasonal allergies, you may have taken that. Or if you have like a very severe allergy that doesn't require an epinephrine autoinjector, maybe you might have taken an antihistamine to help make it easier for you to breathe and relieve the symptoms of an allergy. And this is the rarest type of leukocyte. So compared to neutrophils, which are abundant, this is the rarest type. Now monocytes. So mono sounds like one, right? So it's like, okay, it's talking about, well, they all have a nuclei, so like I don't really like that mnemonic. But monocytes, these are travelers, and they're highly mobile throughout your bloodstream and tissues. Why? Because they're kind of on their patrol. They're kind of like the security crew for your immune system. And I mean, neutrophils are also part of the security, but these are kind of like this is what they're meant to. Monocytes are supposed to do. They're supposed to patrol and surveil your body as well. But the thing is that they can differentiate into macrophages, which is a major type of phagocyte that helps to defend your body by ingesting things and activating your immune system in response to things it ingests. and also dendritic cells, another very important, actually very, very important immune player. But again, that's for later on in the semester. And there are also phagocytes. That's what I'm getting at here. So if you for monocytes, at this point, you should definitely know they are a major type of phagocyte. So I like to think of this like, if you know Spanish, you probably know what the Spanish word for monkey is. So I like to think of like little monkey security patrol on patrol and kind of defending your body. And if it encounters a sort of pathogen or something invading, it eats it as defense. So that's the way I like to think about monocytes. That's my little mnemonic. Now lymphocytes. So there's not a single type of lymphocyte. Like even though it's a category, it's kind of like, okay, it's a category, but it can, this is where you can really go down the rabbit hole. There are many subtypes of lymphocytes. It's a broad category. They're all very important for your immune system, but different types of lymphocytes have very specific functions. So they include your natural killer cells, which are not the same thing as neutrophils, not the same thing as macrophages. And then you also have your T cells, not the same thing as your natural killer cells. And in fact, there are several types of T cells. And then you have B cells, which produce antibodies. And then, yeah, so these are all types of lymphocytes. So again, it's not just all lymphocytes are not the same. This is a category that includes a broad amount of immune cells that are part of both your adaptive and innate immune system. So this is more abundant in the lymphatic system. That's why they call it the lymphocytes. But again, they look maybe at the surface level, they look very similar, but when you actually look at what they do, they have many different functions. But again, don't go too deep into this right now. We're still early on in the semester. Okay, so then relative leukocyte abundance. So remember I said neutrophils are the most abundant, they're the most common, basophils are the least common. So I like this mnemonic. So this is what we have here. If you order them for the most common to the most rarest and the least common, you notice that neutrophils, majority of your leukocytes. Then when you go to lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils, less than 1% for basophils. So my favorite mnemonic is never let, so here we have a monkey right here, right? And we're going to be mean to the monkey. So we said like, you can't have your little treat. So we're going to say never let monkeys eat bananas. So monkey is sad because we're not allowing him to eat bananas. But I like this mnemonic because it not only tells you the first letter of all of these types of leukocytes, it puts it in order. I like it when the mnemonic has multiple layers because it has more information. So that's why it's one of my favorite ones. So again, right now we're starting off with blood, and don't go too much in detail about what these specific types of neutrophil or lymphocytes do, but go with what I'm going here. So it's like, okay, we know all of these are white blood cells, and notice the ones with like a lot of granules, they have and this kind of spotty texture, they are granulocytes, and granules are again like the ammo canisters for these types of, for certain types of immune cells. Now, basophils, I want you to associate them with inflammation and allergies. Again, what's the mechanism behind allergies? We might have time to get to that this semester, but that is like almost a lecture or several lectures on its own. And then monocytes, I definitely want you to know that the neutrophils, eosinophils, and monocytes are all phagocytes. And lymphocytes, again, don't go too crazy if you're like, you'll have to know NK cells, T cells, and B cells later on this semester, but I think going too much into detail at this point is a lot for the first exam. So just know that for the first exam that they're involved in immunity and lymphatics. Now what we have here, so what did we cover? Well, again, we have our stem cells, but now we have our different lineages, and whether it's like, notice that the myeloid stem cells, these can make 4 of the 5 types we call. Okay. All right, so we know our 5 types of. Okay, so now we know our 5 types of white blood cells, and this is how you get these white blood cells. You start off with a hematopoietic stem cell. Then it starts differentiating, and there's 2 paths it can take. And the myeloid stem cell path results in 4 of the 5 types. You can see here. And then over here in the lymphoid lineage, you have lymphoblasts, and all of these here, natural killer cells, T cells, and B cells, these are all lymphocytes. So again, all white blood cells, just like all red blood cells come from a hematopoietic stem cell, all white blood cells come from a hematopoietic stem cell. It just depends on the path it chooses.